It's fabricated with materials that shouldn't exist, and yet this is clearly a very ancient artifact. Leonardo da Vinci, June 25th, 1488. Hello, I'm Andrew, and I want to welcome you to Visions of the Past, a podcast all about the lore of Assassin's Creed. This is episode 76, and today we're going to talk about two apples of Eden that were active in the late 15th century. The first apple that we're going to talk about today is commonly known as Aguilar's Apple. This apple has only appeared in three places: the movie Assassin's Creed and its novelization, along with the mobile game Assassin's Creed Rebellion. This apple was first known to be held by the Sultan of the Emirate of Granada, Muhammad XII, during the 15th century. Though it did not help him during the Granada War with the Christian kingdoms of Iberia, Castile, and Aragon, eventually losing all of his territory except for the city of Granada. In 1492, the Templar Order did learn that he held an apple. The Master Templar and Inquisitor General of the Spanish Inquisition at the time, Tomás de Torquemada, then hatched a plan to kidnap Sultan Muhammad's son, Prince Ahmed, to ask for the apple as ransom. That incident went down as planned, and the Sultan was ready to hand over the apple. But this was when the master assassins Aguilar de Najera and Maria appeared to retrieve the apple for themselves. During the fight for the apple and to save the prince, Maria sacrificed her life, but the apple ended up safe in Aguilar's possession. Knowing how dangerous the apple was, Aguilar passed it to a famous explorer that we all know, Christopher Columbus, for safekeeping. Columbus then held on to the apple through his journeys and took the apple to his grave when that time came. Here the apple sat until 2016, when the knowledge of this apple came into the hands of the Templar Order. In October of that year, the Templar Order, using the Abstergo Industries subsidiary, the Abstergo Foundation Rehabilitation Center, had hopes to use the apple to quote-unquote cure violence. So, instead of only looking into the ancestry of just anyone, they managed to use it as a pretense to purposefully single out and capture several descendants of assassins that they knew of. Of course, not everyone was aware what was going on, but eventually the Templars found Callum Lynch, the son of assassins Joseph and Mary Lynch, and a direct descendant of Aguilar. Callum was just like any other person held in the Madrid facility, put into the Animus 4.3 to relive their ancestral memories for Abstergo to explore. But over time, the Templars found through his exploration the location of Aguilar's Apple, which led Alan Rickon, the CEO of Abstergo Industries, to send a team to retrieve it from the tomb of Christopher Columbus within the Cathedral of St. Mary of the Sea in Seville, Spain. The known history of Aguilar's Apple concluded when Alan Rickon was presenting it to the Templar Council of Elders at Holborn Hall in London, England. Here, the assassin Callum Lynch used his newfound skills that he had got via the Animus's bleeding effect to assassinate Rickon, and then fled the building, leaving the apple in the hands of Callum Lynch and assumingly the assassins themselves on December 14th, 2016. The second apple that we're going to talk about today is known by Abstergo as Apple of Eden 6, or as it's more commonly known, Ezios Apple. Just like other pieces of Eden, this apple was created by the Isu and was capable of creating illusions, both tangible and intangible, and control minds. This is the Apple of Eden that was first seen in Assassin's Creed 2. It was then seen in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed Revelations, and Assassin's Creed 3, along with the novels Assassin's Creed Renaissance, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, the Facebook game Assassin's Creed Project Legacy, and it even has a brief mention in the novel Assassin's Creed Revelations. The first known use of this apple was by Sultan Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire. During the year 1453, Mehmed used the apple to fight the Byzantine Empire and take the city of Constantinople. When Sultan Mehmed passed away in 1481, his son Kem tried to use the apple after he failed to claim the throne. Unfortunately, the apple refused to respond to any of Kem's commands, rendering it useless. Chem learned of a group of individuals in Italy who were dedicated to studying the apple, and he believed that the best course of action would be to pass the apple on to them. He wasn't that quick to trust them with such a precious artifact, however, as he believed that the moment they got their hands on the apple, he would immediately be forgotten. He wouldn't be completely wrong in that regard either, as the group in question was the Templars that were led by the Borgia family. So out of his well-placed mistrust, Chem decided to hide the apple in the Templar archives in Cyprus. Here the apple sat until June 1488, when a ship from Cyprus brought the apple to Venice, Italy. Here, Ezio Auditore followed the trail of the apple to Rodrigo Borgia, but after a brief tussle, Ezio did manage to escape with the apple. After realizing that all of his allies were assassins, they inducted him into the Brotherhood that night, and after the ceremony, Ezio, along with Mario Auditore and Niccolo Machiavelli, took the apple to the workshop of Leonardo da Vinci to allow Leonardo to examine the artifact. After accidentally activating the apple, Mario suggested that Ezio take it to Forlì to give it the protection of Forlì's high walls and its citadel. Ezio and Machiavelli arrived in Forlì on July 7, 1488, to find that Cecco and Ludvica Orsi were launching an attack to retrieve a codex map that was made by the late husband of the Countess of Forlì, Caterina Sforza. While helping the Countess, Ezio saved the city, but was left injured with the apple stolen by a monk named Girolamo Savonarola. This wasn't just any monk who spent his life at a monastery. Savonarola was a radical person, trying to bring humanity back to the times of the Bible, where they would live off the land and offer everything up in the name of God. And the next time that we saw him in the apple was when Ezio returned to Florence in February 1497, when he found that Savonarola had been using the apple to control its leaders and its people. After seeing what the city had come to, Ezio set out to kill Savonarola's lieutenants, to bring him out into the public, where a mob burnt him at the stake, though Ezio was able to retrieve the apple and put Savonarola out of his misery while he was burning at the stake. After saving the city, Ezio used the codex map that he retrieved from Caterina Sforza to finish gathering the pages of Altair's codex, so the assassins could finish learning about the prophecy that dealt with the Apple of Eden. This led Ezio to head to Rome, realizing that Rodrigo Borgia, who was now Pope Alexander VI, had the papal staff, which itself was a piece of Eden, and together the apple and the staff would open something special. Arriving in Rome on December 28, 1499, Ezio infiltrated the Sistine Chapel and fought Rodrigo for control of both pieces. This fight ultimately ended with Ezio opening an Isu vault underneath Vatican City, where he spoke to the Isu Minerva. Once confronted with an entity that Ezio could only describe as a god, he listened and held out the apple where Minerva appeared to touch the apple before disappearing. On his way out of the vault, Ezio met with Mario, and the two fled with the apple. Once getting to the Tiber River, Ezio debated on throwing the apple into it, but when he hesitated, Mario offered to take it, allowing for Ezio to have more time to decide on what to do with the Apple of Eden. On January 2, 1500, after Ezio had been back in Monteriggioni for a few days, Rodrigo's illegitimate son Cesare Borgia launched an assault on Mario's villa. The assault on the villa led to the death of Mario, and allowed for the Borgia to finally take control of the apple. Over the next few years, the apple mostly stayed in the hands of Cesare, except for the occasional handling over to a captured Leonardo da Vinci to allow him to study the apple. Eventually, though, Rodrigo took the apple from Leonardo in 1502, allowing for his adopted grandson Giovanni to play with it. After discovering that he could activate the apple and use it to create illusions, Giovanni saw it as a toy, though, and one day took it out in the streets of Rome while he was out with Micheletto Corlia. Micheletto ended up scaring Giovanni, causing him to use the apple to create an illusion of his adopted father, causing Micheletto to flee in fear. This incident caused Rodrigo to not allow Giovanni to play with it anymore, and after the death of Juan Borgia, Rodrigo hid the apple in the courtyard of St. Peter's Basilica. It was here on August 18th, 1503, that Ezio managed to regain control of the apple and used it to bring an end of Cesare's hope of ruling all of Italy. Ezio held on to the apple for another handful of years until it directed him on where he could finally put an end to Cesare Borgia. But before he left for Vienna, Ezio decided it was best to hide the apple. Ezio placed it in an Isu vault under the Santa Maria in Arcioli. Here, it stayed up until October 10th, 2012, when a group of modern-day assassins, consisting of Desmond Miles, Sean Hastings, Rebecca Crane, and Lucy Stillman, were in the midst of evading Templar pursuit and hunting for this specific apple. After Desmond picked the apple up from its plinth, he allowed it to control his body and kill Lucy Stillman, seeing that if she had lived, the apple would end up in Templar hands. And after doing this, Desmond fell into a coma, and while he was in his coma, the apple was held by his father William until he had come out of his coma on October 30th. When he woke up, Desmond took control of the apple and used it to open the Isu Grand Temple, where the apple seemed to sit until William was captured by Abstergo's Sigma team. This caused Desmond to take it to an Abstergo facility in Rome and used it to save his father and kill Dr. Warren Vidic. After saving his father, Desmond would go on to sacrifice himself to save the world, leaving the apple seemingly in the care of his father, who, to our knowledge, has had it ever since. Now that we've covered the history of these two apples, let's talk about them for a moment. There isn't a whole lot that can be said about Aguilar's Apple, as we really have only seen it in the movie and its tie-ins. It's an apple, though, that seems to be of a different kind than the others that we have seen, being smaller and seemingly a different color, though it is difficult to tell if the color is based on the lighting of the movie or if it's really the color of the apple. It does give off a different color when activated, though, compared to other apples that we have seen. So this apple just kind of gives us more questions than it does answers. The biggest of all, though, is will we ever see it again? Personally, I think it's unlikely because of it being tied into the movie and with it currently being held by Callum Lynch, as I feel that seeing that character is going to be a long shot, unless she shows up into a comic. It's just one of those things that comes out of the movie that leads me to think, without any real evidence, that we'll never see it again, because of the character of Callum Lynch being portrayed by such a big-named actor, such as Michael Fassbender. The other apple, though, has grown to become the standard to which all apples of Eden are modeled from. The apple that Ezio handled in Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, that was passed on to Desmond, was the first apple that we really got a lot of time with. Sure, we saw Al-Mualim hold a different apple in the first Assassin's Creed, but we really didn't see it used more than just in the final fight, which gave us an ability that we saw Ezio replicate in his battle with Rodrigo at the end of Assassin's Creed 2. This apple is one of the most commonly thought of when an apple is mentioned, because of how many times we've seen it. There are a few things that I can think of that goes into this, though. There is, of course, the popularity of Ezio and his games, but there is also the connection it has to Desmond, and how it was used to open the Grand Temple. I do wonder, though, if we'll ever see this apple again. Since the death of Desmond in Assassin's Creed 3, we've only seen William Miles in one game, and he wasn't holding the apple. What is it that he's up to? Is he using the apple? Or is it just sitting in a vault somewhere waiting for Abstergo to come and take it? And that's the question I have for you guys. Do you think we'll see either of these two apples again, knowing that they are currently in the hands of the assassins? Let me know on Twitter at visions_AC. Thank you for joining me today. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for new episodes. If you love stories about Assassin's Creed lore, please follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform, and tell your friends about this podcast. If you have any questions about Assassin's Creed or topics that you'd like me to cover, please feel free to hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at visions_AC, and you can find those links in the show notes below. Until next time, my assassin friends, make sure to follow the creed. And to those Templars listening, May the Father of Understanding guide you.